Good morning, friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday and welcome to Medwell Unscripted. It's been a few weeks since we've seen you and we're so excited because today we are having such a great conversation. We have some really special guests. My name is April. I'm the Director of Marketing here at MedWell Health and Wellness. I have Emily Waxman, our Director of Community Outreach. And we have special guests, Dori Wile with Half Baked Housewives. And we also have Joyce Gerber, the Canna Mom Show podcaster extraordinaire. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So today, well, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for your time today. So today we're talking about cannabism.
That's a new word.
That's the new word.
It is. Cannabis and feminism and just, and what the future is looking like. For all of our friends that are here today, please do we are streaming on Facebook and YouTube. Drop your questions in the chat. We would love to answer them and just give a shout out and say hello and where you're from. If you are catching the replay, friends, absolutely leave a comment or a question and we promise we will get back to you. So, all right, ladies, I want to get started. Let's start with you, Joyce, and tell a little bit about kind of yourself, how you started in the industry, and we'll just start off with some just introductions.
Well, first, thank you. Welcome. I love meeting Massachusetts women. I am a local podcast recorded right here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in my daughter's bedroom.
Love it.
I know. I always say that cannabis isn't my natural habitat. I'm a middle-aged woman. I'm a mother of 2 children. One is now 22. One is 19. I'm a lawyer by training. But as women know, my generation, we know it's kind of hard to do everything, and kids literally don't raise themselves. So at some point along my professional journey, I say isolation, desperation, a lot of rejection, I ended up in cannabis, which would not be my expected place. It's and then cannabis podcasting. Again, this is just not something you would have predicted when I was in high school. I think it's an amazing industry. I met some amazing women over these years. I think this is the industry that women should own and build. This is literally what I talk about all the time. You know, moms, caregivers who are working in the industry and literally changing the way business works. So I'm a woman who's lived in the man's world for a long time. For many years, I was literally told I wasn't good enough. Sheryl Sandberg told me to lean in. And
I love that book.
I hate that book.
Oh,
we could go down that path. Anyways, I was leaning in really hard, really hard. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I have a master's degree. I have 2 children. I've kept my marriage together. I still look good. But the whole professional world kept telling me that I wasn't quite good enough because I couldn't fit into their world. So what I dream about cannabis, literally this is my dream, is that we build a world that works where we can make money and care for our people we love, and we don't have to give up and pretend like we don't have children and we don't have responsibilities outside of work. So that's a bigger dream than just making sure that everybody knows what this plant is and how it can heal them.
You know, I love where, especially at our age, where you start hearing people's story and where they originated and kind of their career paths and all that. I went to school for early childhood. I was a licensor for the state of Massachusetts in family childcare, and how I evolved here, that's always a story. So that's awesome. How about you, Dori? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live in Texas where it is not legal at all. So the first time I mean, believe me, we have cannabis down here, but it's not legal. so the first time I really got into the industry, I was going to Denver quite often for business, and I wanted to go in a dispensary. This was right when it became legal in Denver. And the dispensaries were actually kind of scary looking back then. And so I had to call my male cousin who lived in Denver and get him to go with me because I really was scared. And so we went in when that kind of reminded me of like going into somebody's basement or something. But we went, and he and I both bought some stuff, and I got it home to Texas, and I found, immediately, cannabis replaced 3 prescription medications that I was on. So from that point on, I was just a believer. And then every time I went back to Denver on business, it could be a month later, 2 months later, the industry was changing and the dispensaries were becoming more retail focused and more friendly and more beautiful. And the product offering just seemed to multiply every time I went down there. It was incredible. So I really just decided this is a fast-paced industry. I want to see where it goes, and hopefully I can be a part of it.
Awesome.
That's great.
we're super excited. Like I have so many questions besides the ones that we rehearsed. So
I know it's almost like we're so excited that we can't even contain ourselves, April.
I know. And
so
I
get us all afternoon. We're not
women
going
on our program today. I can't even believe it. I'm so thrilled.
I know. Actually, it's funny. When Emily was talking, like when we were looking at 420 Day, and she had been following Dori, and she was like, "You're never going to believe who's on 420 Day." And then Joyce, when you showed up on 420 Day, she was like, "My podcast idol." So very excited.
I did. I like when you get a little nervous when you get around a star, it's like I as soon as I saw Joyce had put those comments in our section there, I just my head fell off. I was so excited.
My children, I do literally do this out of my daughter's bedroom. So my family has no idea. Outside that door, it's like a sitcom. They have no idea what's going on in here. That I've become a cannabis icon.
That's hysterical.
So great.
So, I guess I want to start off the conversation with kind of what do you feel like are the biggest struggles that, getting into cannabis, right? So I know a little bit in the kind of our green room before we started talking, there's still a lot of stigma around cannabis. And this is one of the, I think, although the pandemic has been challenging and forcing us to be more inside, it's also given us opportunities to really use these platforms to share our messaging and kind of change that stigma and that mindset. So let's talk a little bit about what do you feel like some of the struggles as you kind of started talking about it with your friends, started saying, "Hey, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to do a podcast." I'm going to know everybody's perspective is very different. So if you'd like to start.
Dori can start.
I can start because I'm in a state where
She's
it's
in
not legal.
Texas.
So honestly, when I first got the idea to do this, I went and had a photo shoot done in Colorado. And I was actually going to use a fake name and pretend I was from Colorado so that, the police wouldn't bust down my door. But then that didn't really align with all the social media guidelines of be authentic, be yourself. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to have to do this and use my own name and be in Texas. But one of the things that inspired me was I just have so many friends that use cannabis and they're just not comfortable coming out of the green closet, so to speak. They're just not comfortable talking about it. It could be because they're doctors or lawyers or hospital administrators, or they work for a congressman. They're just not comfortable. So I feel like I'm speaking for them. And it's really unfortunate because when you think, if somebody here in Texas finds out their doctor uses cannabis, then they might think, well, he's not a good doctor, she's not a good doctor. But what you don't think of is, well, how many gin and tonics did that doctor have last night before your surgery? So it's like, why is it okay for us to drink a lot? And I will tell you that Texas used to have really strict liquor laws too. And then the minute the pandemic started, what did the governor do? He said, you know what, we can have home delivery. And, really just kind of kept us all like drinking the whole pandemic. And, I just don't agree. I don't see why that is right. And yet, and we're in session right now, right? We're in legislative session that ends on Monday if it doesn't go into a special session. And it is like pulling teeth to get them to even approve adding 3 more conditions to what we call our medical program, even though it's only cannabis with 0.5% THC. So it's just kind of souped up CBD even. Interesting. Well, and one of the things they're doing now, they want to drop it down to 0.1%, and it makes no sense. So we've got some struggles and some challenges, and that's what really keeps me going and keeps me educating about it. And I've spoken before the pandemic, I would go on at kind of intermission between 2 70s, party bands and speak to the crowds about that we want to move forward and everybody needs to work together to legalize it in Texas. And the response was overwhelming. I mean, it was kind of funny. I would get on stage and they'd look at me and everybody's like, what in the world is she doing up there? And I'm like, do you want to legalize marijuana? And they're like, wow, everybody goes crazy. Because it's not something people get up and speak about in Texas. And once somebody gives you permission to say, all right, let's start talking about
I think she froze there.
All right, So that is so we're in Massachusetts. So I mean,
That
people
would be in
like,
culture shock Texans coming to Mass is like culture shock, almost like when you first went to Colorado.
but it's also like, think it's culture. So this is the United States of America, people. And these are two states that are treating this same plant in such different ways because of the politics. And this is what I talk about a lot: pot, politics, and religion. Bring them all on. But whoever is whispering in the ears of those legislators, that's how the rules are being made. So I was talking to Gina Wenzel down in Pennsylvania yesterday, and she does the political thing, and she talks about how she's getting Republicans. We don't need any more. We know what we think this industry is, and it isn't. I literally play tennis and wear pearls. This is where we're coming from. That we need to. This is the Venn diagram. Cannabis is the Venn diagram of politics. If we can get this together, because it actually heals everybody. And we present this as a healing and wellness product. This is how we are going to, this is a plant that does everything. I sound like, Bubba from Forrest Gump. You can eat it, you can swear it, you can smell it, you can tincture it, you can put it on your skin, you can put it in your hair, you can build a house with it. This is a plant that we have. And now we have politicians in this state who are getting really bad information from a lot of people. And we have someone like Dori and other people, women all across this country who are doing this work because literally, they have healed themselves. Those are the stories I share every day. These women who have healed themselves, these women who have healed their children. This is a healing plant. And now they are so motivated. And this industry is so hard. And I can go down the reasons of why it is so hard, starting with capital, the banking.
Yeah.
I'm a podcaster. I'm a lawyer. So I understood the issues with this, but I intentionally trademarked and set up my name of my show as the Canna Mom Show. Canna is in my name.
Yeah.
I couldn't get a bank account in Massachusetts where it is legal for 6 months. So how are you supposed to enter this industry if you can't even get access to capital? I mean, there are a lot of issues going down, and I'm very involved, and Dori's involved with social equity.
Sure.
What we're saying is this is a women's industry. Being state specific has a lot of complications, but it does give opportunity to small businesses to get their roots in deep in their communities. But to get their roots in deep, they need capital. And that's really a huge thing in this. And I'm working with ArcView, and they're doing a women cannabis group. So they have investors, women investors and women entrepreneurs. This is a big deal. My one concern, and I just say this as a woman of a certain age, the women my age who succeeded often acted like the men. Culture is culture. You don't even know what you're doing unless you're in it, which is why there are usually one or two women in those positions at the top. These women who are coming in with big money, who are very powerful, have actually made it in the world. Thank you, Sheryl Sandberg. You have to look at the rest of us and remember what our boundaries were and what our structures of opposition were, and how are you going to create a new world with your money to help this business structure work for everyone. I mean, really, that's what it's got to be different. But if women are doing this, I mean, I talk about it all the time, I joke, but women are literally doing this across the country and in Canada and across the world, really. Anyone who has access to, our generation was given education. You can't take it away. There's a lot of women lawyers I know who end up dropping out and are moms, but they're like me. We got a good 30 years in us. We can fight hard, and we're going to do this. We're going to use our voices for this. I think it's powerful and exciting.
It absolutely is.
Very exciting.
It is.
Dori, so sorry you got cut off with technology. What a pain in the butt.
Right? I think it's because I'm the furthest away. If I were in Massachusetts, it'd probably run smoothly.
It's Texas. They're like watching you, Dori. You're like that crazy half-baked housewife.
That is funny, but Joyce brings up some good points. And I mean, she and I agree on this completely. It's like this, it's a female plant. Females are nurturers, we're caregivers. Like we even use cannabis differently. We use it for healing and for medicinal purposes versus men who use it more socially. But yet overall in America, 70% of the purchasing decisions are driven by women. Yet we're woefully misrepresented or underrepresented when it comes to who's getting capital and who's able to expand in this country in the cannabis business.
Such a great point. So true.
That's amazing. I love the statement that it's a female plant, right? And that we're nurturers. So that, I think that's What a great marketing way to market that. Like my mom, oh, I love that. I love that. What can we do with that? So, yeah, thanks, Karen. So we are very lucky to be in Massachusetts. 12 prescriptions. Wow, that's a lot.
And that is a common story. That is the thing I keep hearing over and over again. Again, I came to this. I really believed everything I was told growing up. I believed that it was bad for your brain. I believed it was more dangerous. When my children were young, I was a divorce attorney. So I was a bit stressed. And I would have to make that calculation. I joke about this. I would make the calculation. Could I stop at the liquor store before I picked my kids up? Because God knows, I couldn't make it through the night if I didn't. That moment, it was very hard to shift that moment from being kind of angry and professional to being like nice mom to a bunch of toddlers.
Sure.
I know now that cannabis would have been very beneficial. I'm going to be a much better grandma. And again, this is the thing about moms. We are my children are older now, but even in lockdown, I will say my children are in college. They were sent home like refugees, basically. We were, we were.
I have a college student. Yep.
Yeah. So my son was in Spain, literally, like he was in Spain. My daughter was in Arizona. There was so much drama. My husband works for Biogen. Like we've been in this deep. So from the very beginning, and whatever. I didn't know cannabis would be essential. I was like going crazy when my kids showed up. We had no toilet paper, but we had salves, we had tinctures, we had flour, we had all sorts of stuff to get us through. And I will say it was a much easier experience doing that with my grown children and relaxing that way with them rather than drinking while we were locked down together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to talk a little bit about I want to talk a little bit about your shift. So where you started, and I'm going to start with you, Joyce, kind of. So as an attorney, divorce attorney, clearly you were using cannabis earlier on. So where was that shift and what did that look like of getting into the cannabis industry? Because I do find, when you walk into a dispensary, right? So let's use that as an example. It's a lot. There's probably less people our age that are in working in the cannabis industry. It's definitely a younger demographic. However, there is people that are like-minded entrepreneurs like us that are usually they started the business, whatever it may be. So let's talk a little bit about what made you shift into kind of the industry.
Oh, desperation, isolation, and rejection. That's really the truth.
Okay.
I believed everything in 2016, and my relationship was basically, I kind of believed it was bad for you, but I had some girlfriends who smoked sometimes. So we get a little, I laugh now, we get like a little bud. We go to like their Cape house. We'd have a great weekend, Like,
yeah, girls' weekend, of course.
On the beach. It was awesome. Felt a little guilty, drank some more wine and came home,
Exactly.
Whatever. So 2000, but I thought it was, I don't know what I thought. I just wasn't part of my lifestyle. This wasn't like, it wasn't my lifestyle. So anyways, I went to, in Colorado in 2016, my husband and I took a trip. I call it my cannabis awakening. I just thought it would be fun. My kids were teenagers. I was working then. My life was fine. We went out for the trip. We met a woman named Goldie Soledar who had a business called City Sessions, and she picked us up and she basically toured us around. She took us to a dispensary. She took us to a grow facility. She showed us. She talked about the history. Like I didn't even know what the endocannabinoid system was. I didn't know the ancillary. I didn't know any of that. Who knew that? Anyways, I ended that tour and I was like, wow, everything we know is wrong. I came home. My kids were teenagers. I said, everything we know is wrong. And they were psyched. But I didn't. there was no plan to work in the industry. 2016 was literally the same year Massachusetts, we voted to legalize adult use. Right. And at the end of that year, a contract position I was working on ended. And then I literally became invisible. Like, I was like a middle-aged invisible woman whose career looked very weird because I kept dropping out to take care of my kids. So I'd done everything from, divorce law to factory work in that order. So it looked a little bad. Like,
sure.
Whatever. So when I went back, and then I started meeting all these other women, literally like me, overeducated women who took time off because children don't raise themselves. And my husband always had better health insurance. So anyway, so then I'm going crazy. My husband says I have to go into therapy. I start talking to the therapist about my career. She's like, you really couldn't have designed a job that was worse for your personality than divorce attorney? I was like, yeah, I know, I sucked at it. But I could also see that all the law firms were literally starting to set up cannabis departments. Like, it was new. When do you ever get to be part of something new? Which is what I find so exciting for women my age. So that is kind of how my dive started. So she's like, yeah, cannabis law, that's a great idea. But that's how I kind of got into the world. Like, I didn't know anything about cannabis really. So I started learning, because that's what smart girls do. We learn.
Yeah.
Like, boys jump into this because they have money and think they can do it.
Mhm.
You know, girls, unless we have 7 degrees and have crossed where like Sheryl Sandberg tells us to do, we won't do it. Anyway, so I dug in deep. I learned about the endocannabinoid system. I went to Elevate Northeast meetings. I started meeting women, and everyone was so nice. But again, I went into this for a job. Everyone started their meetings with intentions. And I'm like, we should do that in divorce law. That would be so much nicer.
Yeah, sure.
Anyways, I'm going, but nobody has any money. Like, everyone's lovely and nice, and it's fascinating, and I can see how great it is, and I'm hearing great stories, and I'm learning about the history, and my husband, like, I have charts all over my room of what I'm learning, but I can't figure out where the money is. Then in 2018, I went to an event in Boston. It was a couple of guys who own some of the bigger dispensaries, because of the way it came in Massachusetts. Again, it's all about capital. Medicinal came in first. That's who was in the game at that point. And I wanted to meet one of the I didn't really know I fit in, which is kind of the message I give to women all the time, is that we're elevating the professionalism of this industry. Whatever it is, your skill set that you own, we need it. You know, once you learn about the industry, you can see where you can help. But you can help whatever you do. Anyway, so I'm at this meeting, and I met this person who wanted to start a cannabis podcasting media company, and I knew nothing really about podcasting. I didn't even actually know what they were. I didn't really know much about cannabis, but he hired me, and that's how I learned the industry. So that's how I got into this, and I started meeting people every week. I was the executive producer, so every week I'd bring someone on who I didn't understand. I didn't even know. Like, oh my God, they're doctors and nurses, and I had a district attorney. And if you know anything about district attorneys, I had a person running for district attorney who was willing to come on to his show and talk nice about cannabis.
Wow.
So
That's amazing.
it is. So I could see the breadth of this was amazing. And the Canna Mom Show came about a year later, when I was just in the studio with another friend talking about how you talk to your children, because this is an interesting transition for us.
Yeah.
Sure.
My children are older, so it was a different conversation. I do meet a lot of moms now who have been medicating since their children were small, and they understand what this medicine is, and they can talk about it in such a smart way. But there's most of us are kind of in between, because we lived in the shame.
Right.
So that's how we started. The show started talking about how you talk to your kids. Then it ended up, my friend didn't want to do it. Then I started talking to women in the industry, and then I left the media company and started the Canna Mom Show on my own with my friend Amy as my co-host in 2019. That's kind of how it really got started. And we were like Thelma and Louise, but there are so many women in this industry. And I was interviewing, I'm a local. I'm in Massachusetts. I thought it would be more local people, but I've been interviewing women internationally, Canada, Israel, a lot of industry women out on the West Coast, just because they're ahead of us. But this season 2, which I just finishing up in June, focused a lot of Massachusetts women, and it's very exciting.
Awesome.
So that was my
that's
long
amazing.
story. That's how it happened.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And I again, what I love about the platforms that are available is you can be worldly, right? So your focus, which gets the message even further. How about you, Miss Dori? Kind of how did you kind of transition into the sharing and really starting your business?
Well, I think it just lent itself to Texas being so anti-cannabis that it was just a good way to get the word out, because otherwise nobody's talking about it here. And I'm in San Antonio, Texas, which is also known as Military City, because we have so many military bases, which means we have so many former veterans that have PTSD. And no way to treat it. And, then one of our friends came over, and he was telling me how cannabis saved his life, that he was drinking a lot. He was at the end of his rope. He literally was about to commit suicide when someone gave him cannabis. And it just opened his mind up to all the possibilities, and the world got a lot lighter instead of darker. So that's one of the things that was going on in session. That's one of the illnesses that we're trying to add to Texas's compassionate care is PTSD. And the lieutenant governor, after it passed the Senate, he grabbed the bill and refused to let it progress into the House. So I was so proud of the San Antonio newspaper. They came out and said, the lieutenant governor obviously does not like our veterans. Well, that's all it took. And he released the bill, and it is going to pass now. There's some weird revisions on it and stuff, but it's going to pass. Yeah. And, so I love that. I love the platform, and that no matter who we are, and even if you're in your daughter's bedroom or I'm in my dining room, we can make a difference and we can get our voice out there. I have over 500 women in a private Facebook group called Half Baked Housewives, the Sisterhood. And I started taking the emails from Texas Normal and posting them and telling them how to contact the congressman and how to, become activists with the state legislature. And they loved it, because I don't think we ever really knew how much power we did have when the legislation was in session. So it's been remarkable to see other women, like Joyce said, we wear pearls, we play tennis. I'm the president of the board of directors of a large theater in town. I'm super involved in the arts in San Antonio. And yet here I am as a cannabis activist. It doesn't fit the mold, right? And so now you see other women in that same kind of genre going, okay, if she can do it, I can. And now they're becoming outspoken. And the nice thing about us, I guess we call us, suburban moms, is the politicians do take notice of us. So we have to use the voice we've been given.
Yeah.
Sure. Love that.
I do too.
So what would you tell your younger self if you are kind of looking back and you're, clearly you ladies, your messaging is out there, you're on social media, you're podcasting, you're blogging, you're involved in your communities. And so there is younger women listening to you, and what would you tell your younger self that maybe you would, as you were starting out, would do a little bit differently, or maybe not?
Like in life or in cannabis?
Yeah, in cannabis. No, I think in life and in cannabis. I'm more cannabis. So I think one of the things, and it also goes back to, like you were talking about with your girls' weekend and your friends, right? So it was very and I think back to high school, right? Whoever smoked pot in high school was a pothead, right? There was labels. So and the other thing that I attribute it to is that, back in 2000, my husband had cancer and it wasn't legal in Massachusetts. And, it was, people said, oh yeah, that'll help with your nausea. But looking back, I think I grew up I grew up with that. You don't smoke pot, like you're a pothead if you smoke. So there was that stigma behind it. So looking back for me, I would open my mind to really exactly that it's a girl plant, and that it's a nurturing plant, and that it's healing, and and there's wellness involved in it. So my perspective has changed. And I think that I would tell my younger self to be a little bit more open-minded. So,
well, and I think April too, what is so phenomenal about Joyce and Dori is that, we, being, in our 40s, 50s, and so on, you see these beautiful women that are not your stereotypical, individual that is using cannabis. So, you are able to put it out there that this is, this amazing plant that can provide, so many benefits to your life and to enhance it, to make it better, whether you're in a horrific situation where you're suffering terribly from cancer, or you have terrible anxiety, or whatever it is. And to be able to put your faces on that, I think is so powerful, because it really helps destigmatize what a lot of us have grown up thinking about when you are thinking about someone using cannabis. I think we've just all grew up with that in our head. So it's so wonderful when I was able to come across both of you and see what you're doing, and the activism that you're putting out there is just so wonderful, that women, I'm drawn to you both. So I can see why you have the following that you do, because it's important that we have that voice out there, and in multiple voices. I really think that that's what's going to continue to help break that cycle of getting this out of our heads, that, it's very bad if we're promoting this. And it's just so important that we have you both, to continue to, wave that flag for us.
So Emily, I always like to say, when my kids are younger, I just felt bad a lot of the time. I was just stressed a lot of time. So it's I don't have to feel shitty. Like, I wish I kind of knew that. It was almost like
Right.
if I was very stressed out, then I was probably doing it right, because obviously I was under a lot of stress.
Right. And I remember when my kids were little too. And I just remember, I remember being in the grocery line with both of my kids on either side of me. And I must have just looked like I was just beside myself for whatever was going on. And the poor cashier said to me, ma'am, it's okay. So it's like, I mean, I must have looked like a crazed lunatic. And had I had something to be able to go home, and once my kids were safe in bed and my husband's there, it's like I could have really used something that could have helped kind of just take that edge off of my day. I can only imagine what I went home and probably had a just complete mental breakdown, because it's like we're just we're just always go. And I think whether you have little ones or a lot of us have, ones in college, it's still a lot, it doesn't really end for us. We have a lot on our plates, with children, not children, just a career.
And I do share, so when people try to, I'm a little afraid of the psychedelic movement. Like, people keep trying to explain this to me, and I'm trying to get more involved. But like I said, I came from a world where you never starting in a meeting with an intention or kindness, love, hope, generosity, that literally was not part of my male, law world. That just wasn't part of it. So so again, we lived in this weird space. But for moms, this is what our message I want to be. If you are like us, we are exceptional. That is the message. We are exceptional because we have vaginas. For some reason, we were told we couldn't do certain things. But our generation proved it. We all got our educations. We all have our degrees. We've all raised our kids. We still look good, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But we have so much in our head, it's hard for it to go away. And I find that the moment when I'm kind of spinning around and I can't figure out what's going on, I have to sit down with a joint or a cup, whatever, lock myself away for 15 minutes. And it literally resets me. And I think in my younger days, I would have thought that was what being stoned was, and that I wouldn't be able to go take care of my kids. But now I know that's wrong. It literally reset me. It got me back into my body. This idea that mind, body, spirit, again, I took the bar while I was pregnant. So I am very capable of disconnecting completely. But cannabis is really, it's for me, I'm a late bloomer in this. I think it's helping me. I don't really drink that much. I am not on any medications. I don't really have any pain. I really believe it has helped. I'm a religious person. I'm a person of faith. I'm Jewish. I do believe in that idea of oneness. All religions talk about oneness and whatever spiritual level. And I really believe cannabis is part of that. And that's it. My younger self, you shouldn't have to feel shitty to feel like you're doing a good job, because I always got everything done. I never slacked. My kids went to school. They got dressed. We only forgot them at home once. We were good. And now they're grown up. We've kept them alive until we did it. And you will do it too, moms. You will really do it. But you need to take care of yourself for 15 minutes and become whole again. Or else
So
you can't
true.
give. You can give what you can, and then you'll get what you need.
I think of my home videos when my kids are little.
Yeah.
When you were talking to Emily in the grocery store, I was like, yeah, some of my home videos are very stressful watching.
I mean, it is, when I even put myself back there, I start getting like an upset stomach about it. It just brings up that anxiety again.
It is.
But
tough.
again,
My
like
kids
Joyce
are
said, they
20
turned okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. My kids were 20 months apart. It was so tough, and there was really nothing to turn to except for prescription drugs. And I can even remember when my oldest daughter was colicky, and I was losing my mind because I couldn't lay her down. She'd start screaming every time. And I called the doctor, and he called in baby phenobarbital.
Oh, wow.
I mean, so my kids are in their 30s, right? So I'm older than y'all, but I just hate that that's the go-to, is always prescriptions. It's always the go-to when you have this wonderful plant that can really just help so much.
Which is kind of the mantra that, again, so many women I've spoken to, this came as a last resort. They were desperate, kind of like me, but in a different way. They were on so many medications. Their body felt so bad. They couldn't function. And this came as a last resort. Cannabis should no longer be the last resort. It should be part of the package. It could be your first thing you try. It could be part of the other medications you try. Our medicine, our medical facilities, our doctors, our nurses, they know they're failing us. They literally know they're failing us. And this is something they don't know about. And they really want to, I think, if they had the time. So patients who are using this, that's what gives me hope when they have their doctors and nurses who are listening to them. we're going to have to do this together. This is an education thing. We have lots of science now. This is not a belief system. This is a science. And the sooner we get our act together, all parts of society, we will be able to heal. We will literally be able to heal ourselves. And the doctors and nurses know this too. They want to help us too. They don't want to be just popping pills. We just think they should be able to fix our problems. That's our mindset too. This is this is a different kind of medicine. It's personal, but we need help medically too. It's a combination.
You're so right, Joyce, because there's such a piece to it that is extremely empowering. It's very empowering to be able to take your own healthcare into your own hands and, dabble to get to the point where you're finding relief for yourself and knowing that you were able to do that, because we've been so trained throughout the years that you take 2 of these for X amount of weeks, and then you call your physician and let them know how it's you're making out, and if it's not working, and then they try something else. And so this is how we've been brought up to think. And so when you're using cannabis, it's a very different journey for yourself. So there's something to be said for taking that into your hands and finding the right thing that's going to make it work for you, whatever you're trying to treat.
I mean, I think that's why this woman is so empowered. I mean, I really believe that has to be it. They have done this thing that I find so amazing. And I don't know if I would have done it when my children were little. I don't know if I would have been brave enough. I just didn't know enough. I
agree with you.
But they've done it, and they've seen what they know that they understand that what they're experiencing is completely different from the message that's coming at them. So we're sending out a new message. Our words have power.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yet, I just want to add that when you're in a state where it's not legal and you're a young mother and you're using cannabis, there are dangers. There's especially if you're a woman of color. It's very frightening.
Yeah.
Even in California, I just watched a documentary called Theatrics, and it was following a couple of families across the country who had children. I think one of the states was California. These are usually children with seizure disorders. This is cannabis CBD tinctures are great for seizure disorders. And one of the children, the school nurse reported. I mean, this is in California, where it's a legal state. They reported because she didn't understand, and the child was actually taken away from the home for a few days.
Oh, terrible.
Unbelievable.
So that literally people are, and I forget because I talk about this all the time. I've completely normalized it in my house. I have a cannabis bar on my porch. Rosh Hashanah, we had a cannabis bar, wine bar. It was the whole thing.
I want to see a picture.
I'll send a picture. I have a great porch. I do services on my porch every Friday night, and I have because everything's at home now, obviously. I have Buddhas and bongs and my Shabbos candles. I get it all together.
I love it.
I've lost track of my thought. Anyways.
So great.
So what's up next for you ladies? Dori, do you want to start? What projects, what are you working on, and where can people connect with you?
Okay, so Half Baked Housewives, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. We have the private Facebook group too, which is great for women that are not yet comfortable talking about it. So we have this private group where you can ask questions and just a nice safe space. But the biggest thing for me is, like Joyce talked about, we need to generate revenue. I mean, I've been doing this for 2 years. It's been a great hobby, but at some point you have to generate revenue. So I just launched a line of Delta 8 tablets, because Delta 8 is legal in Texas, and it gives you a very mild, feeling, not as much as full-blown cannabis, but it's nice. And then I started with just Delta 8, and now we've mixed it with melatonin and with caffeine, and we've got all these different kind of medicinal uses for it, so to speak, in a state where it's not medicinal. And it's been great. But that was one of the worries too, is and I won't really be relieved until Monday when session ends, but they were trying to outlaw Delta 8 here. So it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So I'm really relieved for that. But
I think I saw your article you posted recently about that, Dori. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and it's complicated, so I won't go into it, but it's nice to have that one small victory and to be able to go forward. But I'm hearing from the women that use Delta 8, because that's all we have available here, is that some of them have quit drinking with it because we've all probably drank too much during the pandemic. So they substitute Delta 8 for alcohol, and they're having great effects. Delta 8 is great for sleep and anxiety. So it's a nice way to introduce this to women in states where it's not legal. And I'm really proud of the product line.
That's phenomenal.
Awesome. How about you, Joyce?
So we are wrapping up season 2 on the Canna Mom Show. we are recording our last show on June 30th, and we're taking the summer off from podcasting. But Dori, my friend Amy Chin, and I are planning on being on Clubhouse. We're hoping to infiltrate the Mom Link Club. We have an application in now. It's going to be, we're going to be the illuminators, 3 Canna Moms illuminating the way. I think it's going to be every week. I think this will be a way to, again, spread the message to people outside the cannabis world, because moms and working women, this is for you. And we're going to help you get there. The big exciting thing you can see behind me, it's like backwards on this. This is the quilt. It's called the Women of the Amazing Technicolor Cannabis Quilt. It is a giveaway. Dori is helping me do this. We have some other prizes. We have a box from My Jane, a romance box, and we have a ardent decarboxylator, which is awesome. I don't know if you guys bake with cannabis, but this decarboxylator is made by a local woman in Massachusetts. She's actually a Northeastern law alum. She was the first woman I met who's a lawyer who's in cannabis. So we're going to give that away as well. Awesome. We're going to be debating the decision on June 1st. You can see it. So that is all cannabis fabrics. They're cannabis themed fabrics. Around it are the women I've interviewed, about 100 women I've interviewed in black and white images. So we're calling it the Women of the Amazing Technicolor Cannabis Quilt. I do this every year. I made it. I don't know if I mentioned that. Last year we did a giveaway. It looked like a bong. We called it a bong for mom.
I love it.
And next year, I'm already planning for season 3, because I will say I've already spoken to so many women across the country and internationally who I'm going to speak to next year. We're starting on psychedelics. We're moving beyond cannabis.
Interesting.
So season 3 will start in September. Zoe Helene is going to be our first guest. Nice. And my t-shirt quilt for next year, just in case anyone's listening, I make t-shirt quilts. That's part of how I fundraise for this event. I do have sponsors if you're interested in sponsoring our show, but I also make quilts, t-shirt quilts, and we're going to do a cannabis, or maybe women businesses of cannabis t-shirt quilt. That's the idea. So send me your t-shirts.
I'm going to send you a little t-shirt for sure.
So that's what's coming up. I kind of feel silly sometimes doing this podcast alone in my daughter's bedroom, but I do meet women on Zoom now, and I see that you're out there, and Clubhouse is amazing for keeping this community together. It really feels, I think this marketing, audio marketing is a strangely powerful tool. So I'm glad that women are on it, and I'm glad cannabis is on it. And this is how we're going to make our networks, because we are not going to be alone anymore. We're going to be together.
Awesome. Awesome.
So great.
Ladies, thank you so very much for being with us today and sharing all that you do. And thanks for all that you're doing to make change in the cannabis community and for all the women and the moms out there. So thank you. We really appreciate your time. All right, my friends, thank you so much for watching today. Before we end today, I just want to quickly we have a very exciting promotion here that aren't you feeling a little bit like the summer vibes? I know I am, right? And it's the official, kind of unofficial kickoff to summer this weekend. So MedWell, we launched at 9 a.m. this morning, a special summer promotion for certification. So if you are looking for your medical cannabis certification, whether you are a new patient or you are recertifying, go to medwellhealth.net and take advantage of $125 for
That's really good.
Yeah, it's a great deal. It's a great deal. And especially if you are a rec user and you're not sure that you qualify, give us a call, because you would, as a medical cannabis patient, you get VIP status, you save on your sales tax. So there's lots of opportunities for savings out there. So share with your friends. We are not sure how long we're running this promotion. The powers that be will let us know when it's going to close. But so I would take advantage of it today. $125 certifications, and go to medwellhealth.net. We're very excited to be kicking off the summer vibe this week. So we have some fun things on social, on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. And we're going to join you on Clubhouse and see what's going on over there too.
Yeah,
to hear that conversation.
I think it's going to be, it's a thing. When I go into business women's groups who don't know about cannabis, because I talk about this all the time, I'm always amazed they aren't. They're like surprised that we exist. So they're waiting for us to tell them that we exist and that it's okay. So their world is waiting for us.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And for all of you, Emily is our Director of Community Outreach, and she has a great event going on at Netta in Northampton on June 12th. It's from 10 to 4. It's a medical cannabis appreciation event. PAX is going to be there, engraving pens. We have MCR Labs there. There's going to be ice cream, food, and there's also going to be Levia cannabis infused seltzer. So please do go to our website and go to our events page. It's going to be a great event. Yes, yes. So super fun. Lots of stuff coming around. Dori, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Joyce, thank you so much. Emily,
Thank you both so much.
Thank you all so much. And everybody have a great unofficial kickoff to summer. And I'm going to do the rain, rain, go away dance for us here in New England.
Oh, New England.
Thanks, ladies.
All right. Bye.